Hi everybody, my name is Irfan Khan. I'm the Chief Product Officer and President of HANA Database Analytics. It's my pleasure to be able to present to you today on the topic around data. Now, this is a very broad topic, so what I'd like to cover off is really some of the key points that I'd like to be able to share with you in terms of how is it that you can truly unlock the value with a precise set of capabilities in and around analytics and planning in particular, but also the broader type of use cases that we'll be able to take advantage of. Now, shortly, I will be introducing a guest from Microsoft who'll be able to give us probably more precision in terms of how they are practically using some of SAP's technologies. But before we do that, let's just start off by perhaps just sharing a bit of a market view. Now, first and foremost, we are, of course, still dealing with quite a lot of political, geopolitical tensions that are out there. Of course, there's still a looming war. We have the backdrop of the pandemic still here. We have economic challenges going across the globe. And this is precipitating many customers to make informed decisions around the runtimes that they'll be choosing. Now, particularly if we look at the database market in general, we are dealing with now many different database options out there. There are specialized databases and all-purpose databases. In fact, Carnegie Mellon University in the US, they manage a database of all databases. And that number in terms of actual products out there now is in excess of 750. So a huge number of choices out there. But the one trend that we're seeing quite significantly now, and this is really the runtime of the future, in fact, more than 75% by 2024, database containers and database runtimes will be running in cloud properties. Now, that's a big departure from the historical sense where many customers would run, of course, on-premise almost exclusively. So we will see a continuation of on-premise environments, but more often than not, it will be a database in the cloud-first strategy approach. Now, another trend that we're seeing is not just the data moving, but the applications also moving as well. So this is closely mirroring the business logic and, of course, the application logic being co-located in a variety of different cloud properties that are going to be out there. And what we'll also now see more often now is the logistics of how is it that applications are going to be developed, how is it that information management is going to be used in a meaningful way, and then how a customer is going to struggle between having, of course, the on-premise world, which of course is still very significant, and then going with this cloud-first approach that many customers, as I've said, by 2024 will be embarking upon. Now, from an SAP perspective, we have a very wide portfolio of technology now. Now, of course, SAP is not new to platforms, but what's very clear is that if we take a look at the business technology platform, this brings to bear a number of different categories. So we have application development, we have integration and extensions, and of course, we have data analytics and planning. Now, when you put all these pieces together, one of the very significant opportunities that we give to our customers is as they want to have a persona where they want to be able to take data and implement data applications which are rich in SAP content, the business technology platform would be a very significant asset to be able to achieve that. Also, when we take a look at the usage of data and the way that we want to build a semantical layer that allows SAP and non-SAP content to be formulated, the business technology platform will also provide that. And then finally, as we look at the value of every customer right now who's embarking upon becoming much more data-centric, there is a need to have a well-integrated set of capabilities, and we're evolving in order to be able to do that. Now, in fact, if you take a look at SAP's evolution here, you see right now that on the left-hand side, of course, we have the myriad data types, which in itself doesn't change. In fact, it's probably being added and of course, being supplemented to on a day-to-day basis. And then on the right-hand side, we see all the practical usage scenarios across all the different user communities. Now, what SAP is heading in terms of, from an integration perspective, rather on the data analytics side, is to absolutely make sure that we have a well-integrated set of services. So if you think about our significant cloud assets right now, HANA Cloud, Data Warehouse Cloud, Data Intelligence, and of course, SAC, we are on a journey to converge those services, not just technically, but also commercially as well. Now, if you look at the foundation in data, you take a look at, for example, everything from sharing data to data quality to looking at the multimodal type of processing across multiple types of data. These are the fundamental characteristics that you need to have in place in order to be able to have a data strategy. But then on top of that, if you have a very significant semantic layer, a business semantic layer, which brings SAP and non-SAP content together, it allows you to start building out a significant value-based association of data, not just data that will sit in silos, in cloud data lakes, or even on-premise, environments in flat files. This gives you an opportunity to really start building a far greater level of value. And you can see, for example, if you look at planning and take a look at analytics as a starting point, our goal is to make this as significant an opportunity as it is, but equally so a simplified opportunity as it may become as well. And this is one of the reasons why, of course, now we put such a big investment in the whole notion of planning and cross-planning or enterprise planning. And I'll share more details with you. In fact, when we get into our fireside chat, we'll be able to talk more specifically around how Microsoft is actually embarking upon implementing and rolling out workforce planning as a starting point, and then actually having an opportunity to really roll out the whole end-to-end planning foundations across the whole of Microsoft as well. Another key aspect is really to have intelligence embedded inside of all your applications. Now, this becomes a very significant opportunity, but equally so, there's a lot of risk association there. And the risk is that you could leave data in silos, which is why you need to have integration. Why is that you need to build a single semantical layer across all the different data sets? If you're able to achieve those two disciplines, then you'll end up with a much greater level of value delivered in a shorter time frame, and ultimately with a better TCO as well. Now, as we take a look at the evolution towards the cloud, it's worthwhile maybe just sharing with you a quick scorecard in terms of what's currently available and what you can expect with the matter of the next quarter or two. Now, firstly, we take a look at many of our customers. We have 60,000 customers that are running in HANA Cloud environments today. There is a significant movement in adoption around HANA Cloud, and we've been working on actually building out a much more significant way of actually allowing customers to be able to migrate directly from HANA Cloud in a much more of a self-service fashion, and being able to take the value and the association of a cloud-based database like HANA Cloud. So we've had actually more than 700 of our plus internal customers already embarking upon that journey, some very significant properties. A good example would be if we take a look at our supply chain planning, and this in itself is giving us the IBP solution to actually run within a HANA Cloud environment. And there are many others to follow, of course, as well. To help our customers achieve the same goal, as I said, we've introduced this tooling to be able to achieve that goal. Also, we're also expanding the number of runtimes that we'll support. So we're looking at EU access with Azure. We're taking a look at AWS, and also broadening the scope even with Graviton, which is an AWS and of course ARM implementation that allows us to be able to take even a greater TCO journey for our customers as well. So that's more to follow in probably 2023, but there's a huge level of investment in making the ubiquity of HANA Cloud pretty much everywhere for all customers in all locations is really what our goal is. And then we take a look at the reduction in terms of overall TCO, and making sure that we can give customers the best runtime environment for the best class of data experience. And this is where we take a look at the cloud data lake, the HANA Cloud Data Lake, giving us a supplement to actually have file storage availability as well. So that you can actually have SQL on files and being able to actually have more of a block store access layer as well, in combination with actually having a relational data lake as well. So our scope is really to expand upon the scenarios around data processing and really make that move to the cloud as effortless as possible. Now, in terms of the final point I want to share with you is around ultimately the user experience. We have a significant effort underfoot right now. We call it internally the data suite and project data suite. And this is about unification. A good example of that would be taking a look at, for example, at modeling and actually having a single domain model approach, where we can actually have a usability of models, whether that's a model that's being created in Data Warehouse Cloud and then being used within SAC in a frictionless fashion. And then as we start looking at enterprise planning, being able to expand the scope in terms of actually having replication-free planning scenarios that we can also support. So our goal really is to make a stronger level of integration immediately out of the box available to you, and ultimately ensure that you can actually fulfill your data journey and being able to get to the next level of your evolution in terms of data processing as well. Now, to share with you some practical examples, I'd like to show you how is it that we can actually take this advantage today using SAC and using the story evolution that we have as well. So let's just quickly get through the demo, and you can take a look at this in just a moment.
Traditionally, people needed to choose wisely when it came to analytics, whether that was intuitive self-service or sophisticated composable logic. But that was yesterday. Today, I can receive customized notifications informing me of potential shortages in my production forecast. From my self-service dashboard, it is evident that cruise bikes, my strongest revenue bringer, will face heavy production shortages in a few weeks. My colleague Derek is at home in the USA, viewing the same dashboard on his laptop. He sees the same problem and decides to dive deeper into the product with the highest production delta. There is a shortage of brakes for E400 due to our supplier being unable to commit. Using integrated third-party data from Data Warehouse Cloud lends further insights into general supplier risk and material price trends. Derek then decides to simulate a vendor replacement. A composable simulation UI extends the self-service dashboard. Here we can see information from SAP Ariba and product footprint management are integrated into the options. The simulated profit margin is immediately visualized. I can also create another simulation on my phone and compare the results. I can now send my preferred simulations to my colleague to create an execution plan. As you can see, there's not one single instance where I had to choose between self-service and composable analytics.
This next section, I'm delighted to welcome Rajama Krishnamurthy from Microsoft, who's going to be able to spend a little bit of time with us and share with us her insights in terms of how is it that Microsoft has been embarking upon their journey with SAP technology. Now, Rajama joins us from Microsoft, as I said, and she has actually had more than 2.5 decades worth of experience working in and around product and leading product teams as well. So Rajama, welcome to our virtual TechEd today.
Thank you, Irfan. Lovely to meet you here.
And maybe just to get us going here, perhaps you can just give us a little bit more of a clarification in terms of the breadth of your role and the type of activities that you're engaged and your team is engaged in.
As you rightly pointed out, I lead a team of product leaders in Microsoft, specifically focused on HR technology across many spheres of onboarding to offboarding, data, experiences, as well as workflows and associated transactions. My team also focuses on some of the critical processes that are necessary for a company like Microsoft, such as workforce planning and mergers and acquisitions and so on. Apart from all of this, I'm also responsible for the strategy and innovations and planning, as you can see, the roadmap for HR technology at Microsoft. Think of me as a coxswain that is trying to kind of work with multiple rowers on multiple rowboats, trying to make sure that we are all crossing this digital river together and making sure that we are achieving the right things for Microsoft.
Super. I mean, planning is a very broad initiative and initiative for most organizations today that have to have a lot of coordination. So when you look at workforce planning, I've just been intrigued to know, A, how is it that you are coordinating all the different stakeholders? And then maybe some of the challenges that you run into that could hopefully help guide some of our listeners today in terms of pitfalls that they should be aware of.
I think as any other company, Microsoft has similar issues when it comes to workforce planning. Whether it is demand planning to be able to understand what kind of workforce that you would need for a particular area, what skill sets, what is the cost, and continuously maintaining that demand and understanding that demand is one part. Strategic planning when it comes to understanding, for example, let's say that Microsoft wants to open a new data center. Where should they open it? What costs and what skill sets will be available in that space? And then think about things like mergers and acquisitions. So talent does not come only from hiring people. It also comes from bringing companies and merging those companies with your company. So to understand what skill sets are you bringing, what talent are you bringing from those is an important part of planning. And last but not the least is this massive reorganizations that we constantly do in companies such as ours to be able to structure our company for whatever is coming tomorrow. And so those are some of the things that we undertake when it comes to planning. When it comes to, do you want me to continue to tell you a little bit more about how we do planning at Microsoft?
Absolutely. I mean, and actually, as you give us that sort of articulation, perhaps you can identify with us, at least right now, given the journey that you've been on, at what point are you at right now? Are you at the sort of the beginning, middle, or the end? I don't think you'll ever get to the end, but nonetheless, if you can give us some explanation behind where the current sort of milestones are that you're tracking towards.
let me just kind of start at the problems that we are facing. Obviously, we do not have an enterprise-wide robust planning solution just yet. However, we have multiple solutions that have been grown in various businesses, and we are trying to figure out how to kind of get a cohesive solution into for workforce planning specifically. But let me kind of take you back to where we have already started. I won't say that we are at the middle, but we are kind of getting towards the middle in terms of how we get to this cohesive solution. What we are doing right now is to actually use SAC planning as an enterprise-wide solution that can bring and work across various business teams, leveraging a lot of the investments that we've already done in things like SAP SuccessFactors, to leverage the business rules and everything that we've already put in, the workflows and the transactions that we are already housing in those systems. And to be able to leverage that and first of all, kind of create the raw materials that is absolutely needed for workforce planning. And what I mean by that is to be able to understand clearly what is the work that we do at Microsoft. So to actually define each employee's or each position's work and as it relates to within Microsoft and as it relates to the industry, and create the taxonomy and associate each and every employee and position to that work. And work, when I say work, it also associates each title and each taxonomy level to the skills that you need, the descriptions, the job descriptions, the knowledge that you need to have in order to accomplish that work. So that's where we are. We are at the very tail end of actually managing to rediscover, redefine work at Microsoft and associate each employee and each position to a new taxonomy using SAC planning.
So Rajama, when you sort of alluded to the fact that you're not at the beginning, but you're heading towards the middle part of this, where presumably you have a better understanding of maybe the semantics that need to be involved. How is it that from a business content, planning content perspective, you have a better handle in terms of knowing the breadth of that content? Have you been able to see any immediate benefits up front, or is it still too early to tell? And maybe a second part to the question is that some of the learnings that you already have on board, I mean, how can we do better? I mean, of course, this is about a fireside opportunity to maybe discuss some of the opportunities for improvement as well, right? So how would you guide SAP and of course, our community here?
First of all, I'm very grateful for the fact that we discovered SAC planning, and mainly because of the investments that we've already made in SAP in terms of our data and our structures that we can now leverage. The fact that we are able to now create a solution for our various businesses to come together, to be able to work in a single enterprise system, to be able to define what I described before has been priceless. Because earlier to that, we were doing a lot of these things in Excel spreadsheets and SharePoints, which we couldn't scale for the 200,000 or more employees that we have at Microsoft. So that's the first. The second part of your question, which is how can SAP help? SAP can help by first, let me just kind of tell you the benefits of SAC planning, and then I'll get into the opportunities. The benefits were how quickly we were able to leverage SAC planning, how quickly we were able to create the analytics that can compare the before and the after, how quickly we were able to kind of attach ourselves to the various systems that whether it is SAP or otherwise, to bring in data that we absolutely needed for this work. So those were all very valuable. Some of the opportunities could include, because we are trying to make it more pedantic, we are making it more democratic in terms of how many people can use planning. We want SAP to kind of start considering how can you make the user experience a lot better? How can you make, in the system help content a lot better, which can then make it easier for us to deploy it across our various business managers and managers across Microsoft as we further our journey into workforce planning.
And in terms of the scope and the scale of this implementation, I mean, how many business users in your estimation would take advantage of this? And is it going to be a walk, run sort of a phase, okay, right, that you're going through right now anyway?
Yeah, I mean, workforce planning, as you in a company like ours, as you can probably guess, is going to take a lot of people to get involved. A lot of businesses, and each business has a different way to look at their own planning. And so not only the number of people, but the number of kinds of workforce planning that we need to address is also manifold. So we are talking about hundreds of people in Microsoft, maybe not line one managers, but leaders in the various businesses, the business managers and admins that actually work towards understanding the workforce, the costing, and everything else for that businesses. All of those people will get involved. So we're talking thousands of people in Microsoft that'll actually start using the system. So that is why it is so important for us to have these systems be very easily understood and intuitive to be able to be used by these various people across Microsoft, which is why I asked for a lot better command on user experience and providing help content within the systems as well.
Yeah, I mean, Rajama, from a content perspective, I mean, this in itself will be the most valuable part. But as you say, the user experience will be the criteria that will define the success. Because content is great, but if it doesn't have the right sort of mechanism to be able to consume the content, then you won't get the followership or the adoption. And just to be very clear, from an SAP perspective, we are putting a significant investment in not just harmonizing business content and of course planning content across SAP, but we also want to make it very easy for the likes of our strategic customers like Microsoft to then be able to extend that by your own values, right? In terms of where you see the other planning models that you may want to incorporate as well. So perhaps you can just give us maybe a quick clarification and a final point of view, just as you kind of look forward, maybe the milestones that you want to track to a year out from now, where would you ideally like to be? And finally, the question that I would have on the back of my mind is, how would you know that you've achieved the goals that you want to achieve?
I mean, I would ideally like to have an enterprise-wide single planning system, at least for people planning, going at Microsoft, whether it be demand planning or whether it be strategic planning or whether we are bringing in through M&As or reorganizing. All of these should, or whether it's sales planning. Every year we all know that as companies we plan our sales organizations differently as well. So all of this should be housed in a single system. That would be my dream. What this means is that from SAP, we not only want best practices that other companies, that companies like us can use when it comes to modeling, but also help in connecting to the various systems, specifically SAP systems, in a lot more cohesive way than what we have today. I've already said user experience many times, so I won't repeat it. One of the things that we are trying to understand is what are the best practices in planning across enterprises like us. And so it'll be great to get a community of practice that SAP can form for companies like us that we can learn from each other as well.
Yeah, no, great. That's very good direction. I mean, I must state up front, I mean, as I've mentioned earlier, I mean, enterprise planning is a significant investment from an SAP perspective. We believe in the value of end-to-end planning. And you've touched on a number of those components, right? So everything from demand planning all the way through to supply chain and of course, financial planning and everything in between. And in order to get that content to be rendered in a way, to be made available, there has to be a foundation in technology. And that's what I can assure you with not just SAC, but also some of the other components like HANA Cloud, and also of other components like Data Warehouse Cloud. These will effectively converge together in order to provide a much more competent platform that you can then do all those scenarios that you described. And we're also finding a significant adoption by our lines of business for workforce planning in its own right, in success factors. So we're certainly going down the right path. Now, I mean, I can't thank you enough, Rajama, for your the support that you've given SAP and the level of insight that you provided today. I look forward to maybe chatting to you again in the future, getting an update in terms of where are you with your implementation. But at this point in time, thank you so much for all your involvement and your support today.
Thank you, Irfan, for having me, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future as well.
Many thanks to Rajama there for sharing her views. All I'd like to now leave you with is just some quick resources that you can see in terms of content that's available out there. Hope you have a great conference, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.